Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the 100-year legacy of Franz Kafka's masterpiece, The Trial. We're going to look at this iconic novel through existential, psychological, and even modern technological lenses to see exactly why it's arguably more relevant today than it's ever been. Seriously, whether you're navigating an endless automated phone menu or trying to appeal some mystery ban on a social media platform, Kafka's world is terrifyingly our world. Let's jump right in with that famous opening line. It immediately plunges us into this super unsettling world where logic has just been completely unmoored. With just one sentence, Kafka traps his protagonist, and us as the readers, in a judicial process that absolutely refuses to name his crime or even acknowledge his basic humanity. The process itself literally becomes the punishment. So here is our agenda for today's explainer. We'll start by defining the Kafkaesque, move into the absurdity of law, explore the psychology of guilt, examine Foucault and the system, and finally look at our modern algorithmic nightmare.
Part 1. Defining the Kafkaesque.
The term Kafkaesque gets thrown around a lot, usually when we're stuck in a completely unmoving line at the DMV, right? But actually, it's a deeply tragicomic experience. The true horror doesn't come from outright violence. It comes from banality, inconvenience, and the absolute derailment of logic. In Kafka's works, a character might be transformed into a giant insect overnight, and yet his biggest concern is simply that he's going to be late for work. That disorienting mess where success becomes literally impossible, that is the true Kafkaesque experience.
Part 2. The absurdity of law. If you dive into the academic readings, Josef K's trial is just this rapid-fire list of absolute absurdities. He's arrested out of nowhere with zero evidence, his guards are corrupt and literally ask for his clothes, the courtroom is filled with illicit affairs, and then there's the ultimate injustice. He is executed on his 31st birthday without ever knowing what his crime even was. The whole process deprives him of his rights until his life loses all meaning. This sets up a wild contrast in political philosophy. The classical Aristotelian view argues that the state is this natural, necessary condition that provides order for a good life, while Kafka completely shatters that. In his grim reality, the state uproots a perfectly fine, well-to-do bank clerk and just abandons him in a whirlpool of clueless accusations and completely illegal proceedings. This existential nightmare is perfectly captured in the academic literature. K is basically trapped in a giant maze of bureaucratic traps, which really mirrors the philosophies of existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. We are isolated beings cast into this alien, unresponsive universe. Man desperately needs clarity, but the world offers absolutely none. K's endless search for a meaningful verdict in a meaningless system perfectly visualizes this tragic human condition. Part 3. The psychology of guilt. Okay, here is where things get genuinely disturbing. A guard actually tells K that the court doesn't seek out guilt randomly. It is actually attracted to it. This is a massive psychoanalytic revelation. The court isn't just a physical bureaucracy oppressing K from the outside. It's responding to his own unconscious internal guilt. By feeling guilty, Josef K has essentially hailed the law and brought it right to his very own doorstep. So how exactly does the system prey on this guilt? Well, the court painter, Tittarelli, lays out that there are really only 3 possible legal outcomes. First, genuine acquittal, which, let's be real, is essentially an unheard-of myth. Second, apparent acquittal, where you are temporarily free but eternally surveilled and could be arrested again at any given moment. And finally, protraction of proceedings. This is just an endless, low-level engagement where the trial spins in circles forever. The system is literally perfectly designed to feed on your eternal, inescapable indebtedness. Part 4. Foucault and the system. To understand why on earth K is complicit in his own demise, we can contrast 2 major philosophical frameworks. The Foucauldian view suggests bureaucratic power works from the outside in, basically mapping K onto a grid and creating his identity through surveillance and discipline. But the psychoanalytic view of Lacan and Slavoj Žižek argues that's incomplete. They suggest K brings his own unconscious guilt to the system from the inside out. Because K can never live up to his ideal self, he feels an inherent guilt that the system happily preys upon. Looking at the academic analysis of this exact dynamic, we see that the law essentially acts as an obscene supplement. The bureaucratic machine corners you into a situation where you are forced to break the rules just to survive. And then, of course, it manipulates that violation as a permanent threat against you.
It relies heavily on our desperate desire to find order where absolutely none exists. This whole psychological trap is anchored perfectly by the metaphor of the door. K literally walks through a filthy tenement door to face the court. But later, a priest tells him a parable of a majestic door, where a man waits his entire life, only to be told right as he dies that the door was intended for him alone. It proves the law is a highly personal maze. We all project our anxieties onto it, mistakenly believing our specific door will finally give us answers.
Part 5. The Modern Algorithmic Nightmare.
If we map Kafka's world directly onto ours, the parallels are frankly terrifying. He completely anticipated how modern power operates. His faceless clerks, those are today's automated chatbots that downright refuse to let you speak to a human. His inaccessible courts, they're the proprietary black box algorithms deciding our credit scores and mortgage applications. And his physical labyrinths, they are the endless online user portals that conveniently crash right when you hit submit. Kafka translated analog bureaucracy into a nightmare that perfectly describes our modern digital systems.
So why does this nightmare still persist over a century later? It really comes down to 3 things. First, the automation of injustice, where human empathy is completely replaced by cold code. Second, the illusion of agency. The system thrives because we genuinely think if we just find the right web form, we can fix the glitch. It's a total trap. And third, the presumption of guilt. An algorithm's verdict often arrives without a human judge, leaving you scrambling to disprove a completely undefined crime. The real horror to take away from all this? Modern bureaucracy is entirely stripped of active malice. The system isn't out to get you personally. It literally just doesn't care. It fails to recognize us as anything more than a data point. Being ignored by a totalitarian algorithm is perhaps even more dehumanizing than being actively oppressed by a human one.
Wrapping up this explainer, we're kind of left standing in front of an inescapable truth. Kafka understood that the door to the law was never actually meant to be entered. It was only meant to be waited before, forever. So what algorithmic or bureaucratic door are you currently waiting before? And knowing what we know now, do you think it will ever open? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me today.